at these aspects.
This meeting
And
is now being recorded.
for the regional vice president's role and how that would contribute into each one of these components of change, growth, and evolution. So kicking it off with the change aspect, and two elements I saw here, and one was health and safety in the broad aspect of change is two real components. The first being technology. Artificial intelligence is now mainstay in everything that we're doing. It's growing. It's providing massive amount of data and analytics that can be applied to take us down different directions that we hadn't seen before. Certainly online education tools, training, all facets of health and safety are benefiting there. And as well as I watched a story last night, and it was on the use of drones. And I knew they were being used for building inspections and things, but they're actually applying drones into pipeline inspection. And where they used to run a pig down the pipe, now they're zipping a drone down the pipe in a housing around the drone. It was fascinating to watch. So technology is definitely impacting. The second piece is around the skills that health and safety professionals bring to the table. Used to be soft skills, and they were the nice to have skills, and those are really becoming the essential skills in the workplace. So from the global perspective, or health and safety perspective, that's what I'm seeing in change. The way I see the CSSE providing support in those areas and really value add to the members is being nimble and responsive in the materials, mechanisms, and advocacy that's being provided. I think the regional vice president role needs to be to participate in that whole change process. Needs to be accessible. So the person in that seat needs to be an accessible body, both physically and virtually, and provide a conduit to the CSSE board, feeding back both ways. So both from the local committees or the local chapters for Alberta, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut, as well as back from the board into those chapters as well. The second thing I'd like to look at, the second aspect, is around growth. So health and safety is growing in scale and scope. There's more elements that are aligning as part of health and safety now than have been historically. And the example I'd provide would be the inclusion now of psychological hazard as part of the health and safety model, which brings a whole bunch of other professions, quasi-professions, and skill sets under the health and safety tent. And that's one example. We could float risk into that equation as well. Certainly hygiene has been there for a while. Audit floats into that equation. So all of that starts to line up under the health and safety tent. When I look at the CSSE and the value add there from the CSSE perspective, again, the CSS needs to be a presence both in Canada and globally. And we need to engage in an ever-growing set of organizations, relationships with those organizations, and partnerships. And really we need to move outside the traditional health and safety box now to bring in some of those other organizations. In the RVP role, speaking for myself particularly, I bring some existing relationships to the table in some of those outside of the box organizations, as well as we need to pursue interchapter engagement. I'm speaking on the Alberta and north of 60 and Nunavut, if there's a chapter opening there. But to bring some of those chapters together in one form or another, whether that be in joint meeting, joint teleconference, something like this, or a joint event where we can open it up more broadly across Alberta. The other component I wanted to look at, and the final one, as I close out, is the evolution of health and safety and where we are today. This is probably a bit more of the controversial piece, and I expect we'll talk about this a bit more as the session proceeds. But health and safety is definitely a maturing profession. The narrative now is clear about professional regulation and how that could and should look. I think the CSSE needs to take what's now called the national framework, but really that's a bit of a misnomer. It really is a provincial, territorial, and national framework, and take it from concept to full implementation. we need to engage provincially and territorial in that regulatory conversation and consider what regulation of the profession looks like through multiple lenses before bombing down a path into a particular model or design. And I would anticipate some further conversation around professional regulation throughout this town hall. And so in closing, I just want to say thank you so much for this time, and I'm looking forward to hearing from Dan and then any questions that are forthcoming.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And just one thing to mention at this point, in case you didn't hear, if you came in late, we are recording this session and it will be posted on the CSSC's website for the elections. And now I'd like to ask Dan Trottier to say a few words.
Thanks, Kathy, and thanks everybody for joining the call today. I think it's really important that we get together and discuss the questions that are important to the core members within our region, and I look forward to the opportunity to participate. As I look back over time, some of the more engaged and rewarding experiences I've had in my career is I've been working with the CSSC both at a national level on the communications committee and then locally within our chapter executive in Central Alberta. And even regionally, I guess we've had some opportunities to work together within the region in the past as well. I recognize the importance of fighting for our membership, especially when we've got global decisions that have very real impacts at our home base. And I feel strongly that while we pursue our place in the national CSSC organization within the global framework of our world in safety, we need to do so with the support of you, our foundational members. And I believe that some of the experience that I've had over the years, I'll be able to pull on that, and maybe perhaps that would be part of one of the assets that I can offer to the organization at large as the RVP. There's not a day that I'm personally excited and passionate about what we do in safety, and we're living in an exciting time, I think, for the profession. I kind of see it as a turning point. We will probably look back on these days as a turning point in safety in Canada and in fact globally. And as we move towards the regulation of the profession, as Andy was discussing as well, we will all need to actively engage and ensure that we set the table right. I think that's got to be done locally. I think we need to work locally. We need to speak nationally. We need to have a unified voice to make sure that we have a consistent framework across Canada that makes sense in the end. I'm keen to step forward and participate in that process, and I'm happy to have that opportunity to work with each of you on that side of things. I think within our region, we can bring some fun back to the table. I think we can enhance our opportunities to engage in membership and discuss our future together. And I believe that we can create those engagement opportunities through a number of ways. I would like to see us revisit the idea of a chapter executive roundtable, which can be made up of in-person meetings or electronic forums or some kind of communication vehicles that work for all of us in our busy lives. I think we can also support the local chapters and look at some kind of a consistent framework that allows us to, marry the intentions of our large chapters in the regions with our smaller chapters to see what we can do to support each other. I also see the need for us to look at our communication tools and what do we have available that can be used and how can we support those tools better within our region. And for example, I think over years, the website and how the website works at each of the different chapter levels is something that could be perhaps supported. So how do we do that in the region, and how can we work with national to make sure that we're synergizing our resources on a national stage? I also believe that there's advantages to regulation of our industry. I think it can be done to ensure that we are consistent. It can be simple. I think it will help us establish the base guidelines for maybe educational requirements and more so how do we keep ourselves improved and upgrading our skill sets over time to keep up with the world of change that we live in. So I just want to also thank Andrew for the participation in the election process, and I think this is a great forum for us to allow each other's opinions and ideas to come out discuss those. And I look forward to engaging with everybody on the call today and over the years into the future. So thanks for the time.
Thank you very much, Dan. Sorry about that. Okay, at this point, we'll open it to the floor, to you on the line to ask questions. And once again, I'd like you to identify yourself first before you ask the question. And is there someone that would like to ask the first question? Just take your phone off mute if you're going to ask a question. Almost seems like I'm on mute.
Hey, Kathy, it's Corey Papp. Let me start us off.
Okay.
Dan, I think you highlighted in your introduction speech the need to bring the chapter chairs in our region together and ensure that we're sharing ideas and resources. And we did that at one time. We used to bring the chapter chairs together to talk about regional solutions and sharing resources. And that has seemed to stop in the last number of years. Maybe both of you can quickly touch on your thoughts and maybe some strategies around bringing the smaller chapters and utilizing the larger chapters, and how do we get the chairs unified in discussing issues and sharing ideas and resources.
So Kathy would be directing the calls first on these questions.
Pardon me?
Will you be directing who answers the questions first?
If you would like to answer the question, otherwise we can go with the Andrew first and Dan second for the first one, and then switch it around.
Go ahead, Dan. I'll field after you.
Yeah, sounds good. So yeah, Corey, I think back over the years and I was at some of those meetings and I really valued those dialogues that we had because, I mean, I think it was a chance for each of the chapters, regardless of size, to express ideas of interest, areas of concern. And it kind of allowed us to get an semblance of issues that we needed or could work on together and support each other. So how we do that, well, we used to get together, but I think we can maybe complement that with some kind of an ongoing communication tool or vehicle, you know, whether it's an online Skype kind of sessions or some kind of a blog board that the chapter executives have access to. You know, I think we can look at a number of areas there that will allow us to keep the conversation going beyond the in-person meetings, which have a certain cost associated with them that we have to be very conscious of. But so I guess I would look at it as getting together as the chapter executive first, and we would define kind of the path forward for that communication vehicle, and then implement that program going. That's kind of what I was foreseeing we would do.
Thanks very much, Dan. And Andrew?
Yeah, Corey, I deal with this. I chair a group, Campus Alberta Risk and Assurance Committee, and we often wrestle with how to get together for some of the face-to-face things, and we do have teleconferences and some virtual meetings as well. So you know, much of this will mirror. I think there's definite value in bringing the chapters together and the executive and seek other opportunities for maybe broader full chapter events as well, where it makes sense. I think bringing together for some conversation and dialogue around successes chapters are having, challenges chapters are having, things that should be moving up more to the national board level, to inform an RVP role, as well as things coming from the national board level I think there's value in all of that with the chapters in Alberta. I would build in some sort of virtual meeting using the CSSE tools that exist today first. So to establish, a virtual meeting site like this one would be a good example, right, where you could essentially set up a get together. The one thing I would build in, though, to build in some predictability is that they would be routine and they would be timed around kind of when the national meetings are happening, when the chapter meetings are happening. So they're the best bang for the buck, if you will, when people get together with the broadest information. I'd also seek opportunities when a chapter might be doing an event or putting on a training session or things like that, right? When they're not quite full with their own chapter membership, it's worth reaching out to the other chapters to see if anybody wants to engage in that and participate. So we can leverage more broad opportunity across at least the region in Alberta, Northwest Territories, Nunavut. So that's how that would be my approach.
Thanks very much, Andrew. And any other questions?
Hi, it's Denise Howitt. I just had a question. So I've heard from both Andrew and Dan about how passionate you are about health and safety, but I'd be interested if you could tell us a little bit more about your business experience and your plans to help CSSE be fiscally responsible or financially responsible.
Sure. Would you like me to field that one first, Dan?
And that was to Dan, you said? Yeah, Andrew, if you're ready.
I'm good to go. So sure, Denise, my business experience is so I run my budget in my department at NAIT. I've actually ran a small business of my own relatively successfully with all the learning curves and bumps that come with running a small business of my own. I've always worked in organizations where I've had the departmental budget. Certainly now where I'm employed, which is in post-secondary, and I work for the government of Alberta as well. Both times heading into significant fiscal restraint. So to be prudent with budget dollars. I believe that there's a couple of things that need to happen. I think there needs to be full transparency. Certainly in the CSSE model, it's member funded. So there needs to be full transparency in how the CSSE is approaching the dollars. We'd be naive to think that membership hasn't reduced, and I think we need to drive some revenue back in through certainly training education offerings through the CSSE can be, provided they're prudent and value added to members and done with all the quality controls around it that should be there for training education, and simply by driving membership back up in the CSSE. And I think part of that will happen organically. A large portion of the CSSE membership comes from Alberta. The economy in Alberta has we're all here. We know it's struggled, and it is. I think it's starting to show some glimmers of being going in the right direction. So I think there'll be some organic growth back of members, as well as reaching out to those, as I said, those out of the box organizations and quasi safety professions that might benefit from being brought into the CSSE tent to grow the revenue side. And then on the spending side, I think it's fundamentally critical that there be transparency in how money is spent, that we're continuing to participate in the places we need to participate. So if we're going to be seen as a leader in the world in health and safety, we need to spend some money to attend things that are health and safety things in the world, but that needs to be done in a prudent, thoughtful way. Bearing in mind, a lot of those organizations also come to Canada for these events too. So So I think all of that needs to marry together. But again, and I mean, like anything, we need to be audited and evaluated, and that all needs to be transparent. And we need to explain when money's being spent, how and why it's being spent.
Thank you, Andrew. And Dan?
Thanks, Kathy. I think it was Denise that asked the question. Thanks, Denise.
Yes, it was.
So I guess personal experience over the years, I've had just an incredible journey in my career and had the opportunity to participate at an international level on a multinational company. So I was one of the ties around the table, if you will, when we deal with fiscal responsibility at a country level. And I lean on that experience quite a bit these days, but it's been broadened lately. I mean, I have my own consulting business now. And obviously we have mouths that we want to continue to feed that join us in that escapade. And we have a pretty good look to who we are, what we are, and what our commitments are as part of that process. In our volunteer activities, I also have experienced the need to have clear and open dialogue about, fiscal responsibilities that we have, so that we can, manage our events and manage the conferences, trade shows, those kinds of things, so that there's a deliverable that allows us to be sustainable in the long run as well. So a couple of experiences there, I think, that I can lean on. As the RVP, I think there's maybe two approaches to consider. There might be the regional approach, and then the national approach I'll speak to. In a regional context, I think it's really important that we would see our chapter executive participate in the design of our regional fiscal responsibilities. So somehow I think we can get some transparency around where we are at the chapter levels, maybe assemble that with the chapter executives in a regional format, and look together towards, what can we do with the funds that are available. For example, maybe some of the larger chapters could help support smaller chapters with some initiatives that we all agree are important to move forward with. So we could maybe get some transparency around that and open the door for that kind of dialogue to happen. But ultimately, we have a set of dollars to work with, and we have to administer ourselves that bucket of dollars, and we have to do it very responsibly on behalf of the membership, and make sure we're accountable back to the members on that front. And then at the national level, well, I'm not sure. Not sure how the RVP role will play into the decision process at a national level, but I guess what I would envision is that we would want the region to have a perspective on the national financial situation, be able to participate in that conversation on behalf of you, the membership here in the region, with your concerns with respect to where things are at on the national side. So if there's specific issues or if there's specific projects that we would like to see move forward, then I think that would be my role at the national stage, to participate when we look at what we're doing in a national context. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. Sorry, did I cut you off there? Hello? Okay, do we have any further questions? Any other questions? Breaking the silence
Kat-
here.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of one, Kathy.
Yeah?
I am wondering, from either of them, Dan or Andrew, either of you stepping into the role, being successful in it, and in time you'll learn and figure out what the issues are and what is currently the priorities at the national stage that are being worked on. But can either of you talk about your level of awareness or understanding of what currently the priorities are at a national level, and how you would represent our region at those towards those priorities?
And I'll ask Dan to start on this
So
one.
I think, yeah, I can step forward on that one, Kathy. Thanks. Yeah, so Corey, that's a great question. And I've had some exposure at the national level through the Communications Committee and a couple of events where I've had the opportunity to attend and present with the board. So I know a few years back we built the strategy for the organization. I believe it was called the CSSC 2020 plan. And I think as an organization, it clearly laid out some basic premise for the strategic plan for us to work towards with some critical objectives. And I know as the Communications Committee chair, we had some deliverables that we were asked to work on towards meeting those objectives for the organization. So I see the need to revisit the strategy for the organization perhaps, and maybe continuously update it as we go, which I'm certain is happening. And I think, giving our volunteers in the organization an opportunity to work on projects that come along with that strategy and contribute towards their success would be a very real effort that I would take pride in helping out with. I also know that we've been talking for many years about restructuring who we are and what we are as a national organization. And it's maybe timely for us to look at, with the regulatory initiatives that are underway for the profession in Canada, to look at how we're structured in the CSSC and how does that look, 5-10 years down the road, and maybe start moving towards that as well. So the whole idea of governance and how we're set up would be, I think, an interesting perspective to start moving forward with and get some deliverables there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And Andrew.
Just turning my mute off, so I hope I'm back on again.
You are.
So from my perspective, Corey, I think it's a tremendous question, and so part of my role will be a bit of the learning curve, right? To be sure that I'm understanding from the chapters kind of how the chapters are being impacted by the national body. But I do believe that the national framework, which again I identified at the beginning, I think that's misnamed a little bit. It's really provincial, territorial, and national framework, and beginning to integrate that and implement that across Canada. So the whole strategy, refresh of the strategy, I think belies that national framework or that national document and how that looks. So rebuilding that and really positioning that in a way that we're putting the right roles and the right people and the right structure beneath that across the country to make it live. And I think that's a big job. I'm going to take some time, and it's going to require engagement across every chapter and every CSSE member. I think it's got to resonate that way. So I think creating that infrastructure back and forth, or that communication back and forth, is going to be really important. I think that taking a look at the board itself, and it's beyond governance, actually. It's actually the role clarity of the board, and should we be moving towards more of a competency-based model where people who are sitting on the national board are brought in there, much like the BCRSP does, where people have certain skill sets that are on your board for that skill set purpose, as one of the things we need to look at. I think, and I'll harp on it because it's probably proximal to me, is I think professional regulation and how that looks across Canada, bearing in mind the provincial territorial mandates, but I think the CSSC nationally has a significant galvanizing role to play to that, so there's consistency. And then I think finally one of the issues of priority is to bring back lost members and to find new members, because we need to always be cognizant of the new side of the organization, sure that we're bringing in the right amount of to be sustainable, but also to be value added in the things that we do to membership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And one last question. Okay, hearing none, what I'd like to do is ask each of our candidates to say a few words, just a closing. And this time we will start with Andrew.
I'm going to make mine, I think fairly brief. I say that's all. Some people think of that as a threat, because I seldom am, but I'll do my best. So I've been a health and safety professional for 25 years. I've been involved with the CSSE in a number of different roles, everything from city on the education committee, nationally, the advocacy committee, and the ethics committee. I've been involved in all those facets of the CSSE. Most recently, over the last year, I was the CSSE representative on the Alberta Society of Health and Safety Professionals until May of 2019 of this year. And when stepping away from that, that created some capacity for me to consider what I wanted to do next with the CSSE. I did step away from CSSE volunteerism in 2012 when I was on the Alberta Occupational Health and Safety Council. And in 2014, I became the vice chair of that council and did that until 2017. So I wasn't stepping away from volunteerism. It was just a very different role. It's a ministerial appointment, and was an opportunity that I really couldn't give up. It was really, I think, good for me and good for the province as well at that time. I really thank the CSSE for this opportunity. I should thank everybody who's taken the time to dial into the call today as well. I know everybody's time is precious and busy, and thank you, Dan, for putting your name in the ring on this as well as part of the process. I think that's important. I've really appreciated hearing from Dan and the questions that have been asked today. And I encourage everybody to talk to your peers and colleagues who are CSSE members as well, and really engage them in participating in the process and casting a vote. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew and Dan.
Thanks, Kathy. I just want to close the comments up by saying thanks for the opportunity to discuss the questions today. I look forward to handling those kinds of questions in the future, and believe strongly that we need to revisit our foundational expectations and what we have with our membership, and listen. We need to listen to what's being said, and then we need to provide visibility to what was being said, and then we need to work actively towards those objectives on behalf of our members. So thanks, Andrew, for being a participant as well, and looking forward to the outcome. And I want to encourage everybody to vote as well. I think Perry was saying it's been kind of low over the years, so if we could at a regional level blow the voting out the roof and have everybody participate in the process, that would be just wonderful. So thanks again, and look forward to talking with everybody in the future.
Thank you both very much for your time today, and to all of you who called in. What both of our candidates have said, Dan and Andrew, please vote yourself and get others to vote. Encourage that participation in the CSSE. Thank you very much for your time today, and look forward to seeing you at the conference, the PDC, in September. Perry, do you have any last remarks?
No, I just want to thank everybody for participating, and we will post the recording to the website, and the link for voting I put in the chat comments for those that have not yet voted.
Thanks very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.